The Essex Way begins its 82-mile-long route to Harwich here in the town of Epping, on the very edge of London, at the terminus for the Central Line. The route quickly heads out into the Essex countryside and follows a track to Coopersale Street. Here the path continues north to Gurnham Bushes, a nature reserve managed by Essex Wildlife Trust. It's here the route turns east through part of Epping Forest and across a line of a Roman road and possible fortlet. The first village is entered shortly after, with its own public house at Toot Hill. Continuing east, the path enters Greenstead, with its infamous ancient log church, before entering the small market town of Chipping Ongar and the end of the first day along the trail. The busy Epping Station marks the trailhead for an 82-mile-long cross-county route to the coast at Harwich. The Essex Way was designed to show off some of the county's most stunning countryside and to be easy access, as Epping is the terminus for the Central Line. A plaque on the train station is a lovely addition as I set out on the trail. After heading through a small housing estate, the route heads down a narrow alley into broad open countryside. It's already a stark contrast to only moments earlier, with the rumbling of trains and buses now replaced with birdsong. The Essex Way is a well waymarked route, with a round white disc with two poppies guiding me at every turn. I might be out in the countryside, but the opening miles of this route always hints that you're never too far away from civilization, with the distant rumble of lorries and cars speeding up the M11 motorway. Coopersale Street is a tiny hamlet encountered just over a mile into the trail, with only a couple of houses and a lovely Grade 2 listed Thaden Oak Inn, dating from the 18th century. The hamlet is quickly left, but the sound of the M11 draws nearer as the trail and motorway run parallel up to Gurnham Bushes. Gurnham Bushes is a lovely woodland nature reserve owned and managed by Essex Wildlife Trust and covers an area of almost 80 acres. Here, hornbeam are pollarded, a method of pruning the trees to encourage denser branches and foliage growth out of the reach of the deer that live in the wood. As the trail leaves Gurnham Bushes, the M11 creeps ever closer until a footbridge is taken to cross its many lanes. It is from this footbridge that there is a surprising view, with either side of the road acting like a viewfinder, leading the eye straight down to the skyscrapers of London's financial district, including that of Canary Wharf, over 15 miles away. It's a rather straight path from here on until the woodland is left, but do keep on the lookout for some of the local wildlife, as well as a series of earthworks that cross the trail, which used to mark the boundary of a medieval deer park. The path eventually leaves Epping Forest behind in favour of wide open countryside once more, but observe the land around you as the Roman road crosses the trail only 150 metres away from the edge of the woodland. This can be seen clearly on historic aerial photos, as well as a rectangular double-ditched enclosure directly on the road. From the air, the location of the fort has been highlighted and is only 50 metres to the north of the trail. Toot Hill is the first proper village encountered on the Essex Way, with a small green and village pub called the Green Man. It's several miles of beautiful countryside until Greenstead Green is reached, which has one fascinating historical feature. Greenstead Church is a Grade 1 listed building and absolutely unique. The vertical split oak walls of the nave have been dated to 845 AD, making this the oldest remaining wooden church in the world. It is also noted that the body of St Edmund rested here in 1013 AD on his way to Bury St Edmunds. Leaving Greenstone behind, it's only a mile or so to the final destination of the day's walk, Chipping Ongar. A straight path across fields leads to a minor road into the historic market town, where supplies can be topped up and a comfortable bed enjoyed before continuing onward along the trail. Part 2 of the Essex Way begins in the historic town of Chipping Ongar and follows a path past the castle earthworks on the town's eastern side. The path meanders along the edge of the River Roding, close to the village of Fifield, and eventually onto the small village of Willingale with its 2 churches. Beyond Willingale, the path joins a bridleway along a few zigzags to reach Peppers Green and then the A1060 at Salts Green, where there is regular bus service to Chelmsford for an overnight stay. Chipping Ongar is a small town with plenty of shops and cafes for visitors setting out on one of the trails that passes through the bustling streets. Ongar Castle sits just to the east of the main street and dates back to the 12th century and once had a large stone keep on a high motte. Sadly, there is no access to the earthworks, but a path does pass around, allowing for the odd glimpse of the water-filled moat. St Martin's Church in Ongar is a Grade 1 listed building with a wooden spire. The original fabric of the building dates to the late 11th century, making it even older than the castle earthworks nearby. Heading out of the village, the Essex Way actually follows a short section of the St Peter's Way, another long-distance route to the coast, this one ending at St Peter's Chapel at Bradwell-on-Sea. Take special care crossing the A414, and on the other side the route enters a small wood, followed by open fields, where the original route used to be closer to the River Roding, but recent diversions have forced the route slightly to the west, along the public right-of-way. The River Roding remains in company for several kilometres, as it meanders its way through the open fields, until it's crossed at Tunbridge. The first real signs of civilization since leaving Ongar behind comes in the form of a tiny hamlet called Cannons Green and consists of only a couple of houses at the end of a lane. The path quickly leaves the road to pass the village of Fifield, and after a couple of miles will arrive at the stunning two churches in Willingale. Willingale is a lovely small village with a rather unique feature that is passed directly along the trail. Willingale has two churches that are situated right next to each other. They date from different periods, the oldest being St Andrew's and All Saints Church, which was built in the 12th century. St Christopher's Church dates to the 14th century and likely built due to the old church being too small for all the worshippers who wanted to attend, and rather than demolish the old church and rebuild, a decision was made to construct a new one alongside. Leaving Willingale behind, there are few signs of settlement until the main road is reached at the end of the day. A bridleway is picked up and zigzags its way north to the A1060, passing the odd farm, and forms part of a massive network of rights of way around Pepper's Green. Pepper's Green is eventually reached, with a few houses at the end of a narrow lane being all that's about. Continuing along the lane leads to the main road, with a bus stop opposite to catch a bus into Chelmsford for an overnight stop before returning the following day. Part 3 of the Essex Way begins at Salts Green after a short bus ride from Chelmsford. A track is followed northeast, away from the busy main road, which heads past Farmbridge End and into the village of Goodeyster and past its lovely spired church. A series of tracks and footpaths then complete a gentle curve round to the village of Pleshy, with its large Motte and Bailey Castle. From here, Walthambury Brook is followed east into Great Waltham, with just a short bus ride to accommodation in Chelmsford. Salts Green, just half a mile from Chalk End, marks the start of Day 3 of the Essex Way. It is possible to complete Part 2 and 3 in one day of around 18 or so miles, but leaves little time to explore some of the points of interest along each section. The well-defined track from Salts Green is followed for about 1 kilometre to Farmbridge End, a tiny hamlet of just a few houses along the River Cann. The hamlet is quickly bypassed and the village of Goodeyster reached after crossing nearby fields. Good Easter is not named after the Christian festival, but rather the Old English word meaning sheepfold. The small village church is bypassed along the trail and is believed to date to around 1200, with additions in the later centuries, and has also been protected as a Grade 2 star listed building. Beyond Good Easter, the route follows a very rural section with little signs of civilization other than the brief bit of road walking at Stagton Cross, before Pleshy is reached several miles further along. The Holy Trinity Church in Pleshy was originally constructed in 1394, but fell into disrepair after the deformation of a college the church was built for. The entire church was almost completely rebuilt in 1868, preserving only the medieval crossing arches and given a Grade 2 star listing. Pleshy Castle, now on private ground, is a Norman motte and bailey castle that dates to the 11th century. The castle originally had a large stone keep on top of a 50-foot high motte, which overlooked a large bailey and the town below. The earthworks that surround the entire village date to the 12th century and replaced older defences that were constructed at the same time as the castle. One remaining structure from the castle is the single-span red brick bridge that crosses the moat to the mound. The bridge was built in the 15th century and given a special protection of a Grade 1 listed building. For those with additional time to spare, a walk around the town earthworks are highly recommended. Leaving Pleshy behind, the route joins a path along Walthambury Brook to the east and passes several small reservoirs which are both perfect for spotting some of the local wildlife. There's a chance to see swans, geese and ducks in and around the water's edge. The village of Great Waltham is finally reached, where there is a lovely pub, shop and tea room for refreshments before catching the bus back to Chelmsford for an overnight stay. Part 4 of the Essex Way begins in the small village of Great Waltham and follows 12 miles of lovely rural countryside through the Langleys estate and numerous picturesque villages, including Little Lees, Fuller Street and Turling, before arriving in the village of White Notley, which has an excellent train link to nearby Braintree and Witham for an overnight stay. Great Waltham is a lovely small village just north of Chelmsford and has excellent public transport links into the city. In the centre of the village is the lovely Grade 1 listed church, which dates back to the Norman period and close by is the stunning timber-framed house called Bollington's, which dates to the late 16th century and possibly used as a guildhall at that time. The Essex Way lies just to the north of the village and enters the vast Langley's estate. After following the driveway past a derelict pillbox, the house is reached, which dates to the 18th century but incorporates an older house dating to the early 17th century. Just beyond the house, the route crosses the River Chelmer, with the lovely sound of falling water over a weir just by the bridge. The first signs of civilization beyond Great Waltham is the tiny village of Chatham Green, with its lovely village pub just off the trail. But it's not long before the village is left and progress is made into Little Lees. Little Lees Church is dedicated to St. John the Evangelist and dates to the early 12th century and is passed just before entering the village. An underpass along the River Ter means crossing the busy A130 can be avoided, but it also allows for a chance to see dragonflies and water birds at certain times of the year. A short detour into the village of Great Leys will lead to the village pub and shop for refreshments if needed. Fuller Street is the next village encountered, complete with a lovely pub alongside the trail and the perfect place to stop for some lunch before continuing on to White Notley. It's not long until the villages of Flax Green and Turling are reached, with several interesting features. Flack Green Mill sits just 100 metres off the trail and dates to the 19th century. This is one of only 2 windmills seen along the entire 82-mile long walk. Another lovely spot is the ford, which is now unsuitable for motor vehicles, but a haven for wildlife and a tranquil spot for a picnic or a place to eat some packed lunch. The last village encountered before White Notley is Fairstead, made up of just a few dozen houses and a stunning spired church. The church is dedicated to St Mary the Virgin and dates to the late 11th century, incorporating ancient Roman bricks within the walls, indicating the area has been settled on for thousands of years. White Notley is finally reached after crossing the River Brain, with the lovely village pub offering a good selection of meals, but more importantly a train station, providing regular links into Braintree and Whittam for an overnight stay. Part 5 of the Essex Way begins in the tiny village of White Notley and heads past Fambridge Hall and under the railway line which links the village to nearby Braintree. Shortly ahead, the route passes close to the site of Cressing Henge, an ancient prehistoric site, and continues to Cressing Church. Beyond Cressing, the path remains very rural, encountering no villages until Coggeshall at the end of the day, but several beautiful historic sites are passed on the way, including Grange Barn, St Nicholas Chapel and Coggeshall Abbey. White Notley is a small village with a pub and public transport links to nearby towns, but other than that it's a very quiet place. The path follows a driveway out of the village past Fambridge Hall, a lovely farmhouse dating to the 18th century. Just beyond, the path heads under the railway line and into the Essex countryside. Just off the path and visible from the air is a square area that's left unploughed. This is the site of Cressing Henge, a very rare ancient site just by the floodplains of the River Brain. The site likely dates to the Neolithic or Bronze Age, making it the oldest monument on the trail. Cressing Church is directly passed along the trail, with origins dating back to the 12th century. Excavations in the 1970s showed the buried remains of a potential Saxon church, with the present-day structure being protected as a Grade 1 listed building. From here on out, there's several miles of vast open countryside and minimal signs of civilization, except for the odd house or minor road. It's actually really lovely to have such a long section in the countryside in a county that, by comparison to other parts of East Anglia, is quite densely populated. Curd Hall Farm is one of the first houses encountered since Cressing, with the hall dating to the 17th century and given a Grade 2 listing. From the farm, the entrance track is followed all the way to Coggeshall and several sites of historic interest. Grange Barn sits close to the trail and in the ownership and management of the National Trust. The barn dates back to the 12th or early 13th century and was built to serve the nearby Cistercian Abbey. The barn is open to the public and displays old tools and wagons that would have been used in the barn throughout history. The tiny St Nicholas Church was originally the gatehouse chapel for Coggeshall Abbey and dates to 1255. Restorations were completed in 1863 and 1897, with further repairs in the 20th century, and remains protected as a Grade 1 listed building. Coggeshall Abbey was founded in 1140 as a Savesiac house, but transferred to Cistercian in 1147. Most of the monastic buildings were demolished after the dissolution of the monasteries, but part of the cloister wall remains in a later 16th century country house. This, along with other structures associated with the abbey that still remain, have been given a Grade 1 listing. Abbey Mill is another Grade 1 listed building close to the site of Coggeshall Abbey, but not directly associated with it. This stunning example of a wooden watermill dates to the 17th or early 18th century. The approach into Coggeshall follows a path through the recreation ground and arrives at the parish church. Here, a short detour into the town centre can be taken to find the nearby shops, pubs, and also the White Hart Hotel for an overnight stay. Setting out from the small town of Coggeshall, Part 6 of the Essex Way crosses several miles of open farmland and countryside to arrive in the village of Great Tay. Passing around its lovely Grade 1 listed church, the route zigzags northeast to quickly join the River Colne and part of the Colne Valley Path. Several miles of the Colne Valley is followed until West Beghaus is reached, with the last opportunity to top up on food and drink until the pub at Hawksley, just north of Colchester. Here a bus can be caught into the town centre for an overnight stay. Leaving the streets of Coggeshall behind, the trail quickly arrives in open farmland, only briefly interrupted by the roar of the A120 just a few minutes ahead. Take care crossing the A120 as it's a fast road, but once on the other side there are a series of quiet field edges, slowly progressing to the east. The tiny hamlet of East Gores is reached after a few miles, which really only consists of a couple of houses and farms. It's important here not to miss this left turn, hidden behind an evergreen hedge, or you will end up back at the A120. The path follows field edges for a short way before completing a few zigzags around woodland, eventually arriving in the village of Great Tay. The Chequers village pub is passed directly on the route, and the perfect place to stop for some lunch if you started the day's walking a bit later, as it's less than 2 hours to this point. Alongside the pub is the stunning St Barnabas Church, which dates back to the 12th century and protected as a Grade 1 listed building. Leaving Great Tay via this narrow path alongside a property, the route completes a large zigzag around field edges and along a tree-lined path to reach the edge of the Colne Valley, marked by a crossing of the Sudbury to Marks Tay railway line. The path descends along grazing fields to arrive at the River Colne, which joins another long-distance trail, the Colne Valley Path, a 23-mile-long route from Great Yeldham to Colchester. Alongside this stretch of the Cone Valley are numerous pillboxes, one of which has an information board detailing the history of the area and people who were stationed here. The small village of Ford Street is passed with the option for some refreshments at the nearby tea room before continuing along the bottom of the Cone Valley to the east. As you approach West Bergholt, the trail passes West Bergholt Hall, a lovely 18th century 3-storey brick house which sits right alongside the stunning Grade 1 listed Church of St Mary. The church mostly dates to the 14th century, but the north wall was shown to have been built around 1000 AD, making it pre-Norman. The village of West Bergholt is passed on its northern side, with a chance to grab some food, snacks and drinks from one of the convenience stores, before the final push across a series of fields to Hawksley. At Hawksley, there is a lovely small pub called the Half Butt Inn for a late afternoon or evening meal before catching the bus into Colchester for an overnight stay. Part 7 of the Essex Way begins in the small village of Hawksley, just north of Colchester, and quickly heads out into the open countryside. The road is followed through the village before a path is joined along paddocks, leading to a lovely small fishing lake surrounded by trees and alive with wildlife. Shortly after passing Holly Lodge Farm, the Essex Way passes Dedham Vale Vineyard, which is set within 40 acres of vines, wood and pasture. This also marks the point where the trail enters the Dedham Vale area of outstanding natural beauty. Boxted Hall is one of several large houses seen along this stage of the route. It dates to the 17th century and protected as a Grade 2 listed building. Just beyond the hall is the lovely Grade 1 listed Church of St Peter, which largely dates to the 12th century, but with signs of its Norman origins. From Boxted, the route keeps to the field paths, aiming for the tiny village of Langham, with its massive Grade 2 listed hall dating to 1740, which overlooks a great swathe of the Dedham Vale. Just behind the hall is the lovely Grade 1 listed church of St Mary, which dates to the 14th century, that is seen after a short ascent up the side of the valley. After crossing the busy A12, the path eventually reaches the banks of the River Stour, which is followed briefly before heading along a track into the village of Dedham. Dedham is an exceptionally popular destination for visitors, with numerous pubs and shops surrounded by lovely countryside and of course the River Stour. In the centre of the village is the stunning Grade 1 listed church of St Mary, similar to that of Lavenham and Long Melford. Alongside the church is a large building that was the old grammar school, rebuilt in 1732 and also protected with a Grade 1 listing. Towards the end of this stage, the route passes close to Lawford Hall, which can be seen behind the hedge line. The hall is believed to have been built between 1580 and 1583, but could be earlier with alterations during that time. As with all other halls visited or seen today, the parish church sits alongside, this one dedicated to St Mary and dating to the 14th century. The path eventually enters the town of Manningtree, with the option of catching a train to the nearby Ipswich or Colchester for an overnight stay, or continuing slightly further to the nearby hotel. Welcome to part 8 of the Essex Way, and I'm actually just between Manningtree and Mistley at the moment on what I thought was going to be a rather boring section, but actually if you take a look, there's the most fantastic view over the entire estuary, and I've seen literally thousands of birds. There's redshank and oyster catchers just flying up and down. It's absolutely beautiful, and I'm just a few hundred metres away now from Mistley Towers. These two buildings are Mistley Towers, and all that remain of a Georgian church which was built in 1735 and later altered in 1776. Now the church was actually demolished in 1870, leaving just these two towers, and they're protected as Grade 1 listed buildings because they are completely unique. After that lovely stretch along the Stour estuary, it's a little bit of a shock to the system when you actually do get to Mistley and you have to turn right past one of the old maltings factories. It's quite loud and there's lots of lorries going past and stuff, but it's behind me now. You can still see the chimney up on the skyline, and I've entered this lovely pasture. Had to pass a field of cows, which was a little bit scary, but I'm going to go through this lovely area of woodland in a moment. I'm just walking through this woodland now, and check out some of these trees. Look at that one there. You can see at the base it's actually broken away, and I think they've discarded the bit that fell off, but it's absolutely huge. Squirrels jumping around, and look at this one as well. Another massive oak tree. I've seen probably half a dozen. I think I can see some more up ahead. It's absolutely lovely. So after passing Mistley, you just join the road briefly again, but here is actually the remains of St Mary's Church. Now, you can barely see it. I can make out a short section of wall over here, and then perhaps a few sections that are all overgrown there. Now, it's believed that the church is actually medieval in origin, with a porch dating to 1500. Now, it's not known when it was demolished, and as I say, sadly, it's just an overgrown ruin now. So I'm just a couple of hundred metres from the ruins of St Mary's Church now, and I've got this fantastic view right across the Stour estuary over to the Shotley Peninsula, and also I can make out the tower there at Stutton Hall. The estuary really is starting to broaden, so I'm getting pretty close to the coast now. I'm just in the tiny village of Bradfield now, and here is the Church of St Lawrence, which likely dates to sort of the 13th century and is given a grade 2 listing. And it also has a little caravan park and camping site over there, so if you are camping the route, it is a good place to stop. So I've just joined this lovely path leading me down to the estuary once more, and I can see over here is the tower that I saw earlier. Now, I was wrong in saying that that was part of Stutton Hall. It's actually part of the Royal Hospital School, which is given a grade 2 star listing and dates to the early 20th century. just strolling around Rabness Nature Reserve, which is owned and managed by Essex Wildlife Trust. And there's plenty of bird life around. There's a few hides as well that overlook the estuary. But I was so lucky to hear a nightingale. It's just such a beautiful song. And it's in the trees just over here, although I can't seem to capture it at all. I'm going to hang around a bit longer and see what else I can see. In the picture in the book, they make it look like it's a bit exciting. Very close now to the end of part 8 of the Essex Way, and I'm here in Rabness now, and this is the Church of All Saints, and it actually dates as far back as the early 12th century and is given a grade 2 star listing. And here alongside is actually an 18th century timber bell house, which is also grade 2 listed, and alongside is Rabness Hall. And now this hall is also grade 2 listed and dates to the late medieval period or sort of early 16th century. Now Rabness is actually the perfect place to break down this long walk between Manningtree and Harwich, as it's situated right in the middle and has a good train link back to Meindl, where you can stay overnight and then return the following morning, which is exactly what I'm going to do. And it means that you can really enjoy walking the coastal sections and spend some time at places like Rabness Nature Reserve and really enjoy the local wildlife. Well, I'm back up on the coastal defences once again, and I've got such a fantastic view once more over the Stour estuary, and my best view yet over to Felixstowe and what looks like Harwich, although I could be mistaken, could be another part of Felixstowe Port, but I think it is Harwich, and it's just ahead here where I'll turn right and follow a little lane leading up to Rabness train station and get that one back into Meindl. Good morning and welcome to the 9th and the final day of the Essex Way. So I began at Rabness and I've got about 8 miles or so to go, the first part of which follows the lovely Stour estuary again, and this time the tide is right in. Yesterday the tide was right out, so I've caught it at a completely different time. I'm going to be following the estuary just for a short way. I'll then cross over some countryside past a couple of villages, and then I think I'll arrive at the sea just south of Harwich, and then I follow the seawall north into the town. It is an absolutely beautiful day. I think it's going to be sunny all day and the views are just fantastic so far. The two nature reserves just along the Stour estuary were absolutely lovely, but sadly when you leave them you come straight out onto this road and there's not much of a verge. You almost have to jump into the ditch every time a car comes, but thankfully it's only just for a couple hundred metres, and then I'll cross some fields and head over towards my first village. So I'm now coming up to the first village since I left Rabness, and this is Ramsey. And as you approach the village, you actually see Ramsey Post Mill over there. The mill dates to 1842 and has been given a Grade 2 star listing, and as far as I can see, the route actually passes almost directly next to it. Now just as you leave Ramsey, you've got to be really careful because you've got to cross the A120, and if you're not paying attention you'll continue straight up into Harwich. You actually need to take a footpath on the right, and it's not well signposted, but what it does is it leads you through all these horse paddocks, a nice view to Ramsey Mill over there, and then round to the south side of Harwich. So I've just skirted the very edge of Harwich and joined this footpath to get my first view of the North Sea, and I can see a tower on the distance over there. I think it might be at Walton on the Naze, not quite sure, but I'm going to take this footpath right down to the coast and then follow that left and into the centre, the ancient centre of Harwich. And I also can see the massive cranes over there, which I think are at Felixstowe. So I'm up on what's called Long Bank, and it's actually a part of the sea wall. It stretches out that way, and I'm going to join the sea further down over there shortly. And I've got this amazing view over this great expanse of tidal salt marsh. I can see a little egret and I can hear redshanks over there. It's absolutely lovely, and there's something special about this place because, you know, I've come nearly 80 miles to get here. I started at the end of the Central Line, right on the border of London. And now if I go any further, I'm going to have to get in the sea. It's just such a perfect place to end a long distance walk. You literally cannot go any further.
Well, I've made it to the North Sea and I've got a lovely view right the way down the coast to Felixstowe over there. And it's about 3 kilometres until I reach the town centre in Harwich.
Following the beach for about a kilometre, the route passes 2 lighthouses, one on the beach and one slightly out to sea. These are the Dovercourt lighthouses, which are protected as scheduled ancient monuments and date to 1862.
This massive structure you can see here is actually Beacon Hill Fortification, which dates to 1889, but it's known that the site was fortified way back into like the medieval period, and then obviously the defences were later upgraded during the World War, and the entire area is a scheduled ancient monument and is very, very well preserved.
Not too far behind Beacon Hill Fortification is Low Lighthouse. This scheduled ancient monument and Grade 2 listed building dates to 1818 and now open to the public as a maritime museum. Just behind the lighthouse is a large recreation field, and on its northern side sits the old re-erected Naval Yard crane. The crane is also a scheduled ancient monument and Grade 2 star listed building and dates back to 1667. It was originally used in the Naval Yard just to the north, but moved here in the 1930s, and likely the oldest of its kind in Britain. Just a stone's throw from the Naval Yard crane is High Lighthouse, another scheduled ancient monument and Grade 2 star listed building dating to 1818. High Lighthouse is also officially the end of the Essex Way, marked by a similar plaque found at Epping Station just over 80 miles away. I'm not going to end my walk here though, as there is one last historic treat to see in Harwich, and that is the Redoubt Fort. Located just in the town centre is the enormous circular Redoubt Fort, again protected as a scheduled ancient monument and Grade 2 star listed building. The Redoubt Fort dates to 1808 and was designed to be bomb-proof thanks to its mixture of brick and granite construction. The site is open to the public as a museum, but sadly closed for me today. And it's here that I'm going to finish this excellent trail right across the county of Essex.